welcome to the HCM studio, where we bring industry experts and non-experts in the HCM industry in one room to hammer out all those LinkedIn topics we see that pop up at the most inopportune time. Joining me today is Phil Pallifrone, founder of Above the Rim Payroll, who is a top performing professional in the payroll and HR industry. And with 8 years of experience driving revenue, growth, and simplifying workforce management for small businesses, he's widely regarded as one of the top small business reps in the industry. I didn't write that, Phil did. Blame it on him. Uh, Also on the panel today is Art Oz, a business-to-business consultant in the HCM space with over 30 years of experience specializing in risk, compliance, and coverage both inside and outside of a PEO model. Thank you, Art, for joining. You've also helped me with forensic payroll in our very beginning, so I appreciate both of you being here. I'm on the host,
Thank you.
and I'm your host, Andy Lopez. You know me as a founder of Forensic Payroll Consultants. All right, folks, we're here. This is the inaugural episode of the HCM Studio, and what a topic that we have today, PEO versus traditional payroll. So, um, I've been wanting to bring this on as an episode in a podcast for many years. Um, Mainly because, in 2010, 2008, 2009, I owned a payroll company. We didn't really go against PEOs at that time because we were very small clients. 1 to 5 employees was our demographic. We were trying to hit those small businesses. Um, and even at the time, I wondered what a PEO was. This topic came about because there's a lot of posts right now, PEO versus traditional payroll. And it doesn't help that it's November when companies are vying for business. I mean, you've got a lot of nexuses with November. It's businesses looking for a change in payroll, payroll providers hunting for new clients, and also benefits. It is open enrollment typically for a lot of companies in November and December, and that is a lot of the PEO's strength in bringing those benefits to bear, all under one umbrella. So, I'm gonna throw it out there. Phil, Art, let's talk. Let's talk about what's the advantages of payroll versus traditional payroll. Are there cons? Are there great fits? Are there not good fits? Um, how and when do you believe one is better than the other? And I think that's where I want to start. I guess I'm going to give this to Art first. Let's talk about PEOs and kind of what they bring, and then Phil, I'll have you chime in as to what your thoughts are.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you. Well, to answer that question, if you know me, you know me well enough to know that I'd probably ask a question to rebut that question is, what's best for the organization? To answer a blanket statement by saying PEO is great or PEO is not good, that I just can't do that. I can't make that assessment, and I never would. And the reason why is because there are benefits to PEO. There are disadvantages to PEO, just like everything. We all have a mobile phone in our pocket. Not one of us can say that it works every single place that exists on the face of the earth. There are dead zones for everyone, even though one might be a great carrier. Same thing with a PEO. The PEO model in and of itself might be great. It might be the perfect answer to all of a company's problems. But then on the other hand, it might not make any benefit at all due to certain circumstances based on location, demographics, needs, compliance, etc. So whether it fits or not, I'd have to understand more about each company and have that assessment done so that I can consult effectively and then guide them one way or another. I'll put it out that way and we can proceed with the conversation. But I feel strongly that an assessment is necessary to understand what the company's needs are so we can pivot accordingly.
Yeah, so Phil, so Phil, kind of give us your take on that because I mean you're deep in the trenches with traditional payroll and you've been for many years. What's your feeling on that?
I agree on that, right? It's funny. I wanted to start this off because I know everybody that's watching this on LinkedIn is going to be like, Phil's going to come on here and say PEO doesn't fit for anybody, right? But I don't truly feel that way, right? I agree with Art that everything needs an assessment. Now, the one thing that I will kind of say that's different about payroll is payroll fits every single company, period, right? Like every single company that has employees and has to pay employees, there is a fit for just payroll, right? I do agree with Art that there are some spots where a PEO makes sense, right? You brought up the benefits. And in that kind of small business space at 15 to 35, can be a little bit more difficult for a payroll company to bring to the table something that matches what a PEO does do the buying power. But I do have to agree with that sentiment of everything needs an assessment, right? It's very difficult to go in, talk to any business owner, and just say, hey, here's what you need. This is flat out what you need, right? It varies by business. But I will say that there's not a wrong fit for payroll. If you have employees and you're paying them, even if it is just traditional payroll, nothing else, there's going to be a need for my services.
That's true. That's
Yeah, I
true.
mean, so under what conditions would you say that, if I'm an employer with 30 employees, um, you know, is there a market for both PEO and payroll? I mean, have you gone
Yeah.
up?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And I know Art will agree with that too. And I think, again, this comes into Art's point, which is probably going to be the topic of this entire podcast, right? Is it's a needs analysis at that point. There's, like Art said, there's pros and there's cons. If I can't come in and match that same benefits price, I have the ability, right, to bring in partners on the workers' comp side, on my side on the payroll and HR to kind of lower those costs. And with that being said, sometimes it's not always a cost factor, right? And when I talk Art, so when I'm talking about PEO, I'm talking about the industry in general. I know every single company is different, right? So it's hard for me to say, hey, PEO industry, you all do this, because I know that's not true. So I just want to throw that out there first, right? But when you're talking about that 30 employee company, right, a lot of these PEOs out there is they're not abiding by the wage base limit to the end of the year, right? That SUI number I've seen, businesses may have a lower percentage, but the PEO in general is going to charge the highest percentage, right? Again, not every PEO, but these are things that I've seen. And when you're talking about a company that has 30 employees, they're probably not making $10 million, $20 million, $30 million a year where they can afford those higher costs. That's where I can come in, right, and kind of piece together that workers' comp piece, that benefits piece, the HR piece, the EPLI insurance.
So
So
Phil, when you piece that together, are you piecing it through multiple different companies, and how are you making that connection?
yeah, so I have partners all across the board, right, for everything. There's multiple partners, right? Andy, I've used you for a lot of things when it comes to tax credits, for example, right? So I have my partners that I work with. I am a network partner of iSolved, and one of the great things about all this iSolved is they pretty much have an open API. So it's very easy for me to make that payroll seem and feel seamless, right? With the 401k, with the benefits, and each system talking back and forth. And when I pick my partners, I make sure that that's something that can be brought to the table, right? Because the last thing I want to do, especially if I'm going up against a PEO where everything's under one roof, is complicate that and to make it not seamless.
Right. So you know, PEO it is seamless, right? I mean, at least from appearances, and I don't know really enough about the PEO space to confirm that, but kind of what's your take on the seamless aspect and the attractiveness of the PEO?
Well, going back one step, you said, I have a company with 30 employees. You know that I was going to come back with, where's your company located? Are they full-time employees? Are they hourly employees? Like, we can't answer the question until we find out some more about it. But to then go further into, you know, is the PEO seamless? It can be. And most of the time it is. But Phil brought up a very, very good point that is, it should be a top priority when it comes to discussing a PEO and considering one is your wage-based limits, SUI rates. All these things are actually very important. He's right about that. And there are some PEOs that will reset you down to zero no matter when you start with them. And there are some PEOs that will give you credit for what's already been paid. year to date. So it's the due diligence that a company representative is going to have to go through to ensure that they cover those topics and they answer those questions so they know what they're getting into. As not all PEOs are built the same, some of them are seamless, most of them. There are some that are segmented, but we don't scoff at that much because ultimately, just like Phil, piecing together different solutions to provide one point of contact, some PEOs do that as well. So a PEO can be a great solution when it's seamless, and I don't want to throw the ones out of the room if they're not seamless because sometimes it's necessary. They might need an impeccable timekeeping solution that's not in-house. They might need to partner with someone. They might have to do custom calculations on FLSA overtime rules versus a state rule. If the PEO software can't handle it, they got to bring in a third party. I mean, look, Andy, your business existed for many, many years because of certain deficiencies in the incumbent payroll systems, right?
Yep.
There's not one provider, not one PEO can do everything under the sun. It's just not possible. And if they say they can do it, I'd question it. But it can be good. It can be a
That's
good
the same
thing.
with payroll, though, right, Art? And I can all agree with you on that. Is there's not a single payroll company that can bring to the table everything, right? There's not. And if anybody tells you they can, run because they're lying to you.
Except for the one you use.
Yeah, I mean, iSolve's pretty awesome. I'll give a shout out to iSolve on that. I have zero complaints so far on iSolve, and I've sold a lot of systems. So yeah, I'm partial towards iSolve for sure.
Andy's not going to like this friendliness. He wants us to go to war.
I know. Everybody on LinkedIn wants us to go to war, so we're gonna have to pretend to go to war here, okay?
It's
Well,
okay.
well, and I think you know, one of the comments that I saw on LinkedIn, which kind of set me off, was that many people believe that payroll is just cutting a check.
Correct.
That's BS. And you can, if you want to DM me on LinkedIn, it's Andrew Lopez, and that's you can do that. Um, I'll be more than happy to answer why that's not the case. Because Forensic Payroll, the company that I created, exists because people thought that payroll was simply just cutting a check, and they fell out of compliance because they simply just sent cash to their employee via Venmo or Zelle, and didn't report the calculations, or they simply just wrote them a check. Uh, so, and I think that's a common misconception is that payroll is easy, and that you do need a PEO to manage everything, right? And maybe those comments were just oversimplifying the process deliberately, to steer the conversation towards more on the PEO side. So, I mean, Art, from a compliance perspective, what can you tell me from your experience that a PEO can offer versus a traditional payroll from what you've seen?
Okay, let's tap into yesterday. Not yesterday per se, the 11th of the month, but pandemic era, 2020. We're in the heart of everyone works from home. Next thing you know, 30 employee company that you had, doesn't matter where it was, but wherever it was, some of those employees took the opportunity to work from home in another state. What happened then? That new state that they reside in and now work in because they're working from home, that state's going to require taxes paid for income most of the time. Some states don't require it, but nonetheless, the company is obligated to keep track of these changes. Now, if those changes aren't adhered to as far as compliance wise, it can result in major penalties for that employer. So not only does that employer need to be aware, but they need someone to hold their hand and support. Just as you mentioned, it's not sending a Zelle, it's not sending a check, it's not paying them cash. You've got to comply with the regulatory agencies to ensure that you're above water, everything is clean, everything is good to go, so that you can proceed with paying them regularly. Now, if there's a different requirement in that new jurisdiction, let's say they went from California to Arkansas. And if Arkansas treats their employees a little bit differently at the workplace than California does, then you've got to adhere to those requirements. Now, PEO would provide you with that shell to ensure that, hey, what happens in Arkansas is clean, it's above water, we're good to go. Oh, another employee moved to Washington? Great, Washington's covered. We've got compliance to cover you there. That's in essence how a PEO would provide one way of support in regards to compliance. Um, Further into the compliance aspect is benefits. And it's a deeper conversation, but if you've got benefits that are being offered to employees and they've changed and you're non-compliant with where that employee works because your business is now technically operating in those additional states, it's a compliance nightmare. So that's why it's good to have a good provider in your corner to support you throughout all these changes, ensure that you don't fall to the wayside and get penalized for it.
So Phil,
And everybody,
I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, you've talked about the connection, you have a lot of partners, right?
Mhm.
That will, based upon that ecosystem that you've developed, it is a really good um, option versus a PEO because you can match the overall umbrella compliance safety net that the PEO offers. However, what happens when those, maybe the what if, right? But I don't know. I think what some employers fear is that the PEO has this larger ecosystem where the left hand knows what the right hand's doing. At least from appearances, that's what is marketed. Whether or not that's true or not, it could vary from a handful of PEOs to the smaller PEOs. On the other hand, with an ecosystem of multiple modular systems, a different payroll system, a different HR system, a different tax system, a different benefit system, a different 401(k) system, how in your mind, Phil, or what have you built to compete against
yeah.
that PEO marketing effort?
Yeah. The first thing I want to say to anybody watching this, I know Art will agree. If your employees go from one state to another and you don't tell us, we can't help you. Right. Like that's number one, right? Is making sure that whoever you're with knows when those changes happen. Right. It doesn't matter if you're with the PEO, payroll, doesn't matter. If you don't make your company aware, they can't help you. Number one. Number two, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about payroll is that, like you just said, the HR is a different system. The onboarding just it's not, right? So for example, with me in iSolved in Mineral, right? It's all one combined ecosystem. Now the benefits, the workers' comp, right? That stuff is not in there. Um, all of my clients have access to a SHRM certified rep, right? And what I suggest to my clients is, hey, let's do a monthly meeting, right? To keep you in compliance. Now, I know that PEO is great at, the aftermath, right? One thing that I've done to combat that is make sure that my clients are prepared before any of that happens, right? Is those yearly handbook updates, making sure the handbook is updated and sent out, right? Staying in contact. I send out a monthly newsletter. Hey, these are the things to watch for. When COVID happened, that's a great point that Art brought up, right? I was sending out monthly, weekly emails. Hey, if any of this is happening to you, I need to know, right? So we need to be a little bit more proactive with our clients. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's any gap between what a PEO is going to provide for those compliance issues, where my system can comply the same. It's apples to apples, just a little bit different, right? Everything's going to work the same. We're going to provide the same compliance, right? The EPLI insurance is going to help them with the handbook, and just kind of staying in front of things and making sure that when we sign that client up, especially if they're coming from a PEO, it's what Art has said. And again, will be the whole topic of this is finding that information, doing that discovery, figuring out what they're coming from, where they're coming from, and then I'm able to replicate that with my network that I've grown over the past 8 years.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I mean,
Phil.
like that makes sense. It makes sense to me.
Yeah. So we're supposed to argue here. Art, this isn't working out too well.
No, well, but no, seriously, it's
Yeah.
the thing is you got to recognize, Andy, Phil, you got to recognize, the PEO is multiple components. You alluded to some of them, right? So there's the
Yeah.
payroll component, which is one core component. It's the base of everything. And then you've got the HR component. Then you've got the risk component, which is the workers'
Yep.
comp and the EPLI. Then you've got the benefits component, and then you've got the compliance. So all these things together is what any PEO out there, and this is across the board, every single one of them is going to say, we'll protect you in these 5 areas. Okay.
Right.
So yes, going back to your very first comment, payroll is very important. It's actually the root of it all, right? But it's the additional 4 pieces. Do they really make sense along with the payroll? That's where you're going to start to see things fall apart or come together.
Right.
Whichever way it goes, it's going to be determined after analysis.
Yeah, and that's one thing I agree with. The one advantage that I think that I have is, selling payroll is it's not an all or nothing, right? Like I don't have to sell them, you know, everything, right? And again, some businesses love the fact that they can walk into a PEO and just say, "Hey, I don't want to deal with any of this crap. I just want give me a price and take care of my business," right? And I've dealt with clients like that where I've lost to a PEO just because they don't want me to piece it together, right? You know, it's there's a time and place for everything, like you said, right? But yeah, what else you got for us, Andy? What else can we argue? Oh, I know what I wanted to bring up here. So one of the things that I've dealt with when I've taken clients off of a PEO, right? And I'd love to get your take on this, Art, is, and again, this is not every single PEO out there. So if you're watching this, don't come attack me. I'm not attacking the whole system, right? But how they're charged, right? Versus taxable wages and gross wages, right? A lot of PEOs are out there charging their clients on the total amount of wages, right? Gross payroll versus taxable wages.
Phil kind of dropped a little bit of a gauntlet here about pricing and payroll versus PEO, a PEPM model, taxable wage-based model. What does that look like? And really, what's the angst over that? Because I think that is a selling point in the payroll industry about why some PEOs, use that pricing model when there could be some limitations with that, or there should be. So yeah, so Art, you know, Phil asked the question. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, yeah, I believe what Phil is getting to is, there are certain pricing structures where you'll pay a straight up admin fee. You're on a PEO, great. You've been underwritten, you're approved, you have a go live date, and now you're starting on the PEO. And some PEOs will charge you a monthly administration fee, and that will cover all the various services. And those fees will then encompass the payroll. They'll encompass the risk component with the workers' comp and the EPLI. They'll encompass everything that the PEO promises for you, right? And you'll have X amount of dollars charged. You have your expectations, and there you go. There are some PEOs will then say, well, it's not fair because some of your employees demand less of us and some of your employees demand more. It's not fair to give you flat fee pricing across the board. What we're going to do is we're going to charge you a percentage of your payroll. Okay. And this is where it really irks people. It's kind of like buying a used car. You got to go through a used car salesman because you got to buy a used car, but the the aura around the used car salesman is horrible, right? So this is where the PEOs do the same exact thing. Sometimes you need the PEO, but this pricing model really rubs people the wrong way. Um, what happens when you have a percentage of payroll? Well, you've got bonuses sometimes that are paid. You've got overtime that's paid. No matter what, there's a percentage that's being marked against every dollar that's out there, and the PEO charges you the percentage of that as your admin fee. Now, that is where things start to fall apart. That's where Phil can swoop in and say, hey, hold on, this isn't right. You're paying how much money for this one person? And it makes it look a lot worse for the business owner when they see these fees because they don't make sense. There's no rhyme or reason in their eyes, even though the PEO feels that it's justified. And no knock on any particular PEO for doing that, but at the same time, business owners not too keen on that. They don't like just paying a percentage because there are variations. What if there's, like I mentioned, like bonuses or commissions or whatnot? They're paying more for the same thing. They're not doing any additional work. There's just more money being paid to that employee. And then they have to pay more admin fees. So it kind of doesn't fly. That's where you can pick it apart. That's where you can see, hey, what's going on here. You can do reverse engineering, which I've done before. When you're pulling someone out of a PEO, what we call it is a PEO extraction. It's kind of like a military operation per se. You can go in
Yeah.
there and extract them from the danger zone, right? But it's not, of course, that's not a knock on PEOs. It's just some companies have outgrown the PEO model and it's no longer a fit, and they require assistance for us to come in and get them out, right? So it's important for us to reverse engineer their admin fees, see exactly what they're being charged, exactly how much of an impact the workers' comp has on these things, exactly what the benefits have. Benefits are usually kept on the outside because they fluctuate every year. And then there's the employee family, et cetera, et cetera. So there's so many things that the benefits are usually kept aside. But nonetheless, if you're able to decipher that, reverse engineer it, you're going to be able to find out where those fees are. And then when you do a side-by-side comparison and Phil brings in his solution or I bring in my solution and we compare it with an admin fee, we're going to look like rock stars because we're saving them boatloads of cash. But each situation is different. We just have to know how to get to the right place. And once we get there, we'll all do fine.
Yeah, I can agree with that. But I do think that I can compete price wise with any PEO out there, right? Not saying that every payroll company can. They don't have the full control that I have. You know, again, we'll talk about how great iSolved is, right? Um, but I think I agree with everything you said. I think the one point that you guys do have an advantage on me is the benefits, right? Um, but one thing I like to ask my clients, which will kind of flip the tables on that, is ask them what the actual rate is, not the group rate, but the carrier rate is, and see what the markup is, right? Because a lot of times when they do that, they won't get that number, or that number will be marked up 20 to 25%. And that's where I can kind of swoop in a little bit.
Yeah. That's a good point. But we can't forget that sometimes those rates are favorable because they're on
Agreed.
a master plan. You know, the PEO is going to have a master plan that they get. Basically, it's like a wholesale rate. So in that regard,
Yep.
that might be a better rate. On the alternative to that is if you're asking that question, you should also be asking, hey, there are particular tax credits available to my organization for operating here at this location to provide jobs for a certain demographic, ex-convicts, veterans, etc. Not to
Yeah,
put them in the
Watsy.
same regard. And
Yep.
and where do those credits go? Do they go to the PEO? Do they flow through to me? These are great questions to ask of the person pitching your PEO because
Yeah.
sometimes you relinquish that. And
Yep.
and you've done all this great stuff. You're enhanced the community. You've empowered the neighborhood, but you're not getting the tax credits that were due to you because you're a part of a PEO. Some PEOs were like, nope, that's yours. It's going to filter right through. So these are great
Agreed.
questions to have.
Yeah.
But to get that rate, it's good because you're going to have visibility into which way you're going to go with all this.
And you know what? Sometimes that bites me in the ass. I'll be fully transparent, right? Sometimes that markup isn't enough where I can swoop in and take it, right? So it's a risk that, I'm willing to take to try to earn that business there. And, talking about rates too, right? Like when LinkedIn, a lot of people will come at me and say, hey, workers' comp, we can get a better rate. Maybe. But if you're going into a pool with 1,000 people and there's some high risk involved there, your rates might now go up for something that you had nothing to do with, right? So not always, but I've seen it happen, right? Where I've brought somebody over from a PEO and my rates are a lot less because they were in a pool full of high risk. Again, this is not any PEO specific. These are just things that I've seen throughout my career.
Oh yeah, there's so many tricks of the trade. I mean, I'm licensed broker as well. So I've seen so many things. I've seen misclassified employees. They'll
Yep.
put a high risk worker in a low risk comp code, class code. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong. It's our job to have that visibility to see what's going on so we can assess and recover from it. Um, but look, I'm going to tell you one thing, Phil. You've said great things. I'm not challenging you on any of those, but here's where I'm going to have to throw my own little gauntlet.
All
You've
right.
got that. You've got that employee count. All right, whatever it may be. Let's just choose a nice, clean number. Okay, let's use 100 employees. All right, and I'm in California. All right, Hollywood, California, Los Angeles in the house. So we've got employees in California at 100 count, and what's going on with our benefits? What's going on with the requirements? Now, are we large group? Are we small group? We've got 100 employees. How many of them are eligible for benefits? Okay, great. It's a lower number. It's not every single person's eligible. Then out of your eligible count, let's just say 70 people are eligible. Out of the 70, let's say 45 of them accept the benefits that are being offered. Well, hold on a
Mm-hmm.
second. Is this large group? Is this small group? Is it what's going on here? Are you determining it's small group or large group based on California federal guidelines? Are you ACA compliant? There's so many things.
There
This
is.
is this is where, and here's the first part of that. It's a headache already just hearing what I said.
Yeah, 100%. That would make anybody get anxiety, right? If you don't know what you're doing. Agree.
Exactly. Then, okay, we know what we have to deal with. Let's go and try to tackle this problem, right? Well, wait, trying to tackle the problem, you're going to, let's say, offer a plan. You choose one of the major carriers. I'm not endorsing any of them. Let's just choose a
Right.
carrier and let's deploy it into the workforce. Open enrollment. Let's go. Let's say we didn't get enough
Good old tail
adoption.
savers.
We're not endorsing anyone right now. We're not paid for that, right? Maybe the podcast is, but I'm not throwing down names. Let's just say we choose a
Right.
carrier and we deploy it. We have open enrollment. We don't get enough participation. After all that effort, the carrier says, "Hey, you don't have enough participation. Sorry, we're not even going to write this plan." Not only has that business gone through those steps, they've gone through all that effort and preparation to go through something they can't even offer it because the carrier said no.
Right.
So
And that's a huge
that's
advantage for PEO. I'll give you that,
that's
right?
yep.
That's a
There
huge
you go.
advantage. But where I come back with that is, right, and I gotta throw this on my partners at that point, right? And it's my job, it's our job as a payroll rep. And this I'll give this to you, right? Not all payroll reps are knowledgeable about every single state, right? And they don't understand that. But when I bring these to my partners, it's hey, here's the situation, right? Obviously, wherever they're coming from, I want to see what they were running before, how many people were in, what they had. And that's where, to be completely honest with you, Art, is where I step back, right? Because I am not a benefits guy. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not going to talk benefits with my clients. I'm not going to talk insurance. If I do, if any of payroll rep does and they're not licensed, that should be a red flag to run from them, right? um, this is what I said in the beginning, right? The one advantage that I will give PEOs is the benefits. That buying power in this situation is huge, right? That's more difficult for me to bring a solution to that table. But I'm not going to throw out any of my partners' names out there. Knock on wood, they've done me good, right? So that's one of those situations where I have to bring it to my partners, be completely transparent with them about the situation, and hope we can bring something to the table. Now, I'm the type of rep, I want to win every single sale, but if I'm going up against a PEO, and in this exact situation, the PEO is a better fit, then guess what? I'm going to tell that client, I'd love to learn your business. What's best for you and your business is to go with that PEO, period, end of story. I'm not going to just try to pull some bullshit over into my court just to win against the PEO, because at the end of the day, you said it. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's not about payroll. It's not about PEOs. What are you doing for that client? Karma's a real thing, man, right? And guess what happens when I do that? I've done this. That business owner now refers me more business than anybody else, because they know that I'm going to take care of them and I did the right thing by their business, not by my pocket.
I can
So,
endorse that.
I'll get back to benefits in a second, but um, what is this I'm hearing about workers' comp in Florida? Florida, the birthplace of PEOs, right? After Florida, PEOs were authorized in California and Texas, right? Um, but what I'm hearing is there's a handful of PEOs and the agencies that they work with. Be, I don't know if it's something happening within the state of Florida or with workers' comp coverage in Florida, but there's a handful of PEOs in the market that are not renewing or not signing up new clients that have workers' comp exposure in Florida. Have you heard anything about this, Art or Phil?
Um, I've heard of similar things, but not on the vein of PEO and payroll. On the insurance side, one thing that people don't realize is insurance is it's legal discrimination. It's what it is. I don't care if some people don't like me saying that. I have friends in the broker community. I'm a broker myself, licensed to be at least. I just don't practice, but it's legal discrimination. The carrier has every right via underwriting guidelines to state I am not writing anything that's got exposure in certain zip codes due to flood, hurricane, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not surprised. It's not really a PEO thing. It's more of an insurance thing. And
Yeah.
technically it's the PEO's underwriting that's rejecting those renewals and non-renewing because they don't want to write that risk. They don't want to insure a business that's going to get swept away to the ocean because a hurricane came through just because they're in Florida. There's risk there. I know people that live in Florida, their homeowners insurance has gone through the roof just because of where they physically are on geographic location. So that's an insurance thing. That's more of an underwriting knock. Not nothing on. It's not anything against PEO or payroll. It's more of an
Yeah.
insurance thing.
Now, the one thing I will say, a little slight advantage payroll here, right, is I could shop 1,000 carriers for that if I have to, right? Like I can go make a post on LinkedIn that says, "Hey, I'm looking for carriers that shop Florida. My main carrier doesn't cover it," and I'm not pigeonholed into whoever that PEO works with. Not saying it's going to be a favorable rate, right? But that's a little bit of the flexibility that I have in not being tied down to certain carriers and that group buy, right? So
Yeah, and you bring up a very
I,
good point. So this is where I wanted to get back to benefits, right? Um, you know, I saw at least from our benefits here at Forensic Payroll that our premiums went up 18%. I mean, and that's a lot. And we have pretty good insurance. How, and this applies to both of you, right? How are I mean, is the PEOs because of you're able to disperse the risk amongst your clients and insurers? Is that are you making more of a benefit, pun intended, off of that risk spread with health benefits premiums going up? Are you capitalizing on that? And that is that one of your selling points? And then Phil, your ability to shop different brokers, is that also helping you as well, being able to shop? And so I want to hear from both of you because this is a really big topic right now, the cost of healthcare.
there's pros and cons of shopping it, right? And I know Art would probably bring this up. So, the pro is I could shop a million different places to find what fits, right? The one advantage that the PEO has on that is it's going to be quicker. If I have to shop 10 different benefits, right? I'm going to need to give those people all that information. And then from there, it takes, 7 to 10 business days. As long as the company is not in a hurry, it's a great advantage, in my opinion, for me to be able to go and shop all of these different benefits, all of these different comps, and bring a whole bunch of options back to the table instead of like, hey, here's our group buy, here's the 2 plans you have to choose from, here's the pricing, right? Now, businesses that just want to just say, hey, I just give me what you got, I'm not going to win in that situation. But in a certain situation like this Florida case or with the workers' comp, being able to shop is a huge advantage, in my opinion, because I can bring more options to the table, more price options, more benefit options. And again, if the workers' comp is getting denied on the PEO, well, now they can't go there. So there's pros and cons, like I said, to shopping. I think there's more pros and cons, but I have lost business before because clients have said, "Hey, I don't want to wait, right? I just give me what you got." And it takes more time when you're shopping, right? Because you got to wait, you got to be on those people's schedule, but it does allow me to offer more flexibility to clients.
Yeah, that's all true. One thing is that I want to note is when it comes to the insurances, there's two different sides of it, right? There's the people and there's the property and the casualty. So the workers' comp, it's one thing, but Andy, you're referring to your benefits, like your health benefits. 18% increase is a significant hit for an organization that's going to trickle down to the employee contributions. The
Mhm.
employer is going to be contributing more. It's just a mess, right? So here's a little secret when it comes to health benefits. On the open market, This is open market. This is all your freelance brokers out there, non-PEO. On the open market, the carrier sets the rates. And the rates are the rates. They're going to choose you for who they like. They like you, they trust you, they'll go with you. That's your advantage. As far as the carrier rates, they are what they are. Now, sometimes those same carriers might have an agreement with a PEO, some PEOs, many PEOs, what have you. It's not all of them, not all the time. Like in California, we have a very big player here in the healthcare industry that offers an HMO that some people hate, some people love, but they don't write through many PEOs and they also don't cannibalize themselves. So if you've got a company that's standalone, a subscriber to their network, and then you've got a PEO coming here and trying to pitch them, the PEO's got to be very, very strong in order to offset other costs because that carrier is not going to go and offer a lower rate just because you're going with a PEO. It's like, hey, all your subscribers, there are subscribers already. Why are we going to lower our price? So there's so many factors to consider when you're doing this evaluation. Now, those healthcare rates, when they skyrocket 18%, it's a global issue above all our heads. It's nothing that
Yeah.
the three of us can tackle, none of the audience can tackle. It's above our pay grades.
Yep.
Those are determined by Health and Human Services, the administration. It's so much this removed from where we sit that we really can't control. We just have to deal with it. Now, sometimes we can deal with it by going into a PEO. Sometimes we can deal with it by other things, but really out of our control, to be honest. What you really should do is find the PEO that will work with you and help you carve out certain, remember those 5 functions of a PEO? Some carriers will let you carve out parts of it to be a part of the PEO while you bring your own coverage for workers' comp or bring your own coverage for medical, as long as they have something.
But isn't that one of the selling points of a PEO, right? That a lot of reps in the industry try and capitalize on is, hey, we'll be less expensive because we can put you into a lower risk group, or we have the power of the PEO and 5,000 businesses that use our insurance carriers. I mean, that's a selling point that's used and historically has been used successfully to woo new clients is, our rates are going to be lower for benefits and cost to your employees because, we're spreading out that risk across multiple employers, not just you.
Yeah, I would come back to it by saying, am I automatically approved? No, they're going to be underwritten individually. Each company, although once they're in the PEO, are going to be part of a master plan, they're still going to be rated individually for their own operations, their own risk. If you've got certain industries, won't even be allowed to get into a PEO, like roofers. Good luck.
Right.
You're not going to. And I think there's maybe one PEO that likes roofers, but all on across the board, that PEOs needs to be underwritten. And if the underwriting department doesn't green light that submission, doesn't matter. So they're still going to be underwritten individually. If they pass, if they get approved, then they enter this shared risk where everyone's got skin in the game and we're sharing the rate. But it's really hard to get there because a lot of times if you show any little bit of a vulnerability, underwriting is going to knock you out.
Yep.
Yeah, and let's talk about not every PEO is created equal, right? There's roughly nearly 600 companies in the US that call themselves a PEO. Out of that, I think 35 or 40 are what's called CPEOs. Those are the certified uh, um, professional employer organizations, CPEOs. Those are the ones who are they are the employer of record. They are everything. They have full risk. They're responsible for all taxes, etc. And then you have the bulk of that 600, which is the who we those are the PEOs we hear of day to day. And then you have the ASO model. Um, you know, can you explain, just for those of us who don't really know, the difference between traditional PEO and ASO? What is the difference between the two of them? And as an employer, why I should care what type of PEO I'm engaging with?
Sure, I can explain. So the ASO model is an HR administrative service outsourcing model. It's basically you retain as an employer, you retain your employees. They continue to work for you and you only. And you have an HR infrastructure in place to help support your organization through compliance, through HR regulations. It will add on to your payroll needs, etc. It doesn't touch on any of the benefits, but it can guide you on which benefits to offer based on legality. Whether it's ACA guidelines or state guidelines, the ASO model will help guide you. It's more of a reactive solution. It's something that's there when you need it, but as an employer, you must be responsible to utilize it. Whereas compared to that, the PEO, we never even mentioned, and it's a good point you brought up. It stands for Professional Employer Organization. Basically, you're hiring a PEO to employ your workers for you. Okay. So when those employees go into work, they're not just working for you, they're working for a joint organization, which is the PEO and your organization together combined. Their pay stubs will reflect it, their W-2s will reflect it, and you're paying on their federal ID, the PEO's federal ID, not your own. So this is a very, very delicate, it's a delicate feature that most business owners usually fall off a cliff when it comes to realizing, wait, they're not being paid off my federal ID. What are we doing? So at that point, it's good to understand exactly what it is. So the PEO is more proactive. Why? Because they've got skin in the game. If you've got your workers working in your facility and they're doing things that are dangerous, that are non-compliant, they're not safety regulations wise, OSHA is going to come in and knock on your door. PEO is going to come in and say, hey, we just did an inspection because they're going to have to do the scheduled inspections. They're going to come and see this is an unsafe workplace. Change these programs, change these guidelines, put down these safety manuals, make sure everyone acknowledges. They're going to proactively come and make sure you're okay. Now, as a business owner, you still have to be responsible enough to let them come in and let them do. Going back to Phil, if the employee moved jurisdictions, you got to tell us or we can't help you. PEO is similar. You got to let them come in and see what's going on. And some people don't like that. But that's neither here nor there. That's the difference between a PEO and an ASO. The PEO includes the insurances and it's proactive. And an ASO is just the HR components added on to your existing HCM infrastructure. And it's more reactive and preparedness. That's the difference.
The one thing too about the ASO is, we saw this during COVID with the ERTC, right? Everything's on your FEIN, and those clients were able to go back and get that employee retention tax credits. Where I'm not saying every PEO denied clients because they didn't, right? But a lot of the PEOs said, too bad. You're not getting that money back, right? And we're not talking 100,000, a million. We're talking tens of millions of dollars that these employers, lost out on. Now, ERTC has happened once, right? So we're talking about a one-time thing, but that's something to think about when you're looking at all these different models, right? Is if something like this happens again, I had companies lose out on hundreds of thousands of dollars because of that.
And during that time, I used to represent a PEO, the big blue brother that we both were a part of at one point.
Yeah.
And we passed it through. So it was a huge selling point for me.
Yeah, you guys did the right thing.
Yeah, and that was a good thing to do because that's hard-earned money. I mean, like these people were struggling to stay afloat. There's some other things as well. There's things like tip credits that were out there.
Yeah, like a tip credit.
And sometimes those tip credits, they don't flow through unless the business is profitable. And I have a restaurant that I frequent all the time that is my old client from my PEO days. And he was able to get tip credits because he was part of the PEO, he was considered profitable because the PEO was profitable and took credits. Whereas standalone, he was sitting there bleeding money. So
right.
Each situation in its own. That's why I say, let's get down to what's right for the business.
Listen, you said it to start this podcast off, right? And it was the best way to start it. I said it's going to be the theme of the whole show, right? Is you don't really know till you deep dive into that situation, right? You don't really know. But the one thing I will say is it's 83-17. 83% share of the market is payroll, 17 is PEO. I'm just going to put that out there because it wants to argue a little bit. So I got to throw that out there.
Hey, that's fine. I'm happy to say that I helped contribute to that 17% at one point in
You
time,
sure did.
but now I'm an extraction specialist. I've got my tactical weapons. I'm coming in, and with honors to Above the Rim Payroll, I'll come in with my Dikembe Mutombo finger wag, and I'll be like,
Uh-oh.
no, 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 no. I'll get you out.
And that's a great stopping point, guys. Art, anything that you want to plug or make us aware of an audience to kind of reach out to you?
Yeah, 5 letters, easy to remember, ARTOZ. Just find me. If you've got employees, you need guidance. Doesn't matter what structure you want to go with, just contact me and I'll guide you in the right path.
Phil?
Yeah, same thing, right? At the end of the day, if you have questions, compliance, payroll, HR, reach out to me. If I can't help you, I'll connect you with somebody who can, maybe Art, right? But at the end of the day, I think we're both out here just trying to do right by business owners. So any questions, concerns, payroll, want a free comparison, reach out. Again, like I said, if I can't help you, I'll point you in the right direction. We'll make sure you get taken care of.
Thanks, guys. That's a wrap. This is the HCM studio. Thank you, Art Oz and Phil Pallifrone, for joining. This is our first inaugural episode. I really appreciate everyone for joining. Please follow us. Please, wherever you get your podcast, that's where you're going to find us. And I look forward to seeing you on our next episode where we talk about service in the payroll and HCM industry. Thank you. Have a great weekend.